Good afternoon, good morning, and good evening. Welcome to EIG's 27th webinar and focusing on new product introduction, generating speed through digitization with SigMax-NH and Dr. Phil Samuel. We really appreciate you joining us today, and we are looking forward to a very enlightening webinar on digitization in the new product introduction space. And we appreciate you taking your time, especially on this in light of COVID and all your other priorities. And we hope that your family is healthy and safe. We've had a number of webinars. This is the third in the series. Our first webinars focused on the speed and resiliency, focused on building the foundation. Our second webinar focuses on rational risk-taking. Today, we focus on digital transformation, and our final webinar will focus on agile sprints. Again, we look forward to an interactive webinar. Please do your best to log into pollev.com/Jim DeVries 073, and so that you can participate in the polling. My name is Jim DeVries, founder, president of Enhance International Group. EIG is a platform of 40+ providers that provide consulting and SaaS solutions to empower your organization's workforce to expand and sustain your organization to become a more resilient enterprise. Our goal is to provide collective, collaborative, experienced thought leadership to enable organizations to deliver self-sustaining, positive margin growth. And we thrive on providing 90-day action plans. We hope that the information is helpful to you, and we welcome your questions at any time in the chat window, as well as participating in the poll questions. So this is, again, the third webinar in the series. We have our fourth webinar coming up on May the 4th. We have another webinar on supply chain risk and resiliency next week on April the 14th. And we have further webinars in artificial intelligence, in video to insight webinar, as well as another webinar on digital twins coming up at the end of the month. I want to take this time to introduce our two esteemed speakers, Dr. Mark Sneeringer and Dr. Phil Samuel. Mark?
Hi, Jim. Just a little bit of background on me. I do continuous improvement consulting after a career of working in that area. I've been focused mainly in recent years on new product introduction and working with engineering groups.
Thank you,
Phil
Mark.
Samuel, pleased to be part of the discussions. One of my favorite topics is a new product introduction. I have had the fortune of being part of dozens or hundreds of new product introduction and have seen the process from beginning to end in a variety of industries. Pleased to be with you.
Thanks, Phil. So with that, I think we'll get started. This is our rocket ship going up, and our first webinar was building a foundation in January that you can find on the EIG website, consultingeig.com. Our second webinar was on March 9th, and it was focused on rational risk-taking. And our third webinar today is on digitization. And again, we'll have our fourth webinar on May 4th on agile sprints. So today's webinar, again, focuses on speed and resiliency, from a digitization perspective, like the one that on rational risk taking last month. This webinar is on the advanced digital tools, which builds on the foundation of best practices we presented in the first session. The full range of digital tools is impressive to manage your projects, organize massive amounts of data, and de-risk the project in the project or service design, and facilitate faster and more robust decisions. Companies that can build a true coordinated digital platform for innovation can obtain a sustainable competitive advantage. And we all know speed is king. And so these NPI speed webinars can be found on the EIG's website, as I mentioned, and we look forward to gaining your feedback throughout the webinar. This is the agenda today. We're going to focus on speed, ideation, visibility, insights, planning, and launching. And so we'll start with an overview of the baseline of the wide variety of advanced digital tools available to help you in your new product or service introduction process. We'll then dive more deeply into 4 areas: the front-end processes to define the customer needs and product requirements, bringing together information from a variety of sources in a single digital twin, using process mining and intelligent process automation, or hyperautomations as it's sometimes called, to help you make faster and more efficient decisions. Most importantly, trustworthy decisions. And this will help you manage your project risk more efficiently and effectively. We'll end with a quick summary with your questions. So we're going to start it off with a polling question. Again, please log into pollev.com/Jim DeVries 073. You will see that also in the chat window. So the first question that we would ask you, what is the impact of COVID-19 on the adoption of digital tools in your NPI? A, accelerated due to COVID, stopped, no change, or not adopting digital tools, or none of the above. So we have already 6 respondents, so that's fantastic. We'll go ahead and see the responses. So it's very interesting. We have accelerated, 33%, no change, half the folks, and 17% none of the above. Phil, Mark, any comments here?
Well, it's been a, go ahead, Mark.
No, go ahead, Phil.
It's been a mixed bag that we have seen in the marketplace. There are many who took the opportunities, took the risk, and gone after reinventing themselves and took advantage of it. Many wanted to preserve cash and took a risk-averse approach and thought we wait out the COVID and come back at it later. So I think you see a representation of that right here.
Yeah, I guess the only thing I would add is the fact that our selection B there, stopped due to COVID, doesn't surprise me as nobody's there. Frankly, because the need for tools has definitely been demonstrated, and then it's the appetite whether or not you can speed up plans you already had, or have to go with what you've been working with. So yeah, I think these results are pretty indicative of what I've been seeing.
Yeah, likewise for me. Thanks everyone for participating in the survey, and that helps us understand where you are coming from. Thank you. Mark?
We're going to jump into the first topic here, and really there's a wide variety of digitization tools that are currently available, and more being created as we speak. However, there's few, if any, companies that we've seen have taken full advantage of them when it comes to their new product and service development. Those organizations, we think, that pursue this transformation will gain significant speed and accuracy in their product creation and launch. I think it's
so we're going to get
Jim. Yeah.
started on looking at the digitization product lifecycle. In the last 50 years, we've been on a journey of trying to digitize the product development lifecycle, from computer-aided design, computer-aided engineering, computer-aided manufacturing. Even though technology has made significant strides, the process of these individual steps continues to be disconnected. And with the demand for higher rapid turns and shortened new product introduction times, it provides a very difficult time for the CTOs, R&D scientists, and engineers to go faster in building new products. And as we move to the criteria validation of the new product process and achieving the intended product design, we leverage things like coordinate measuring machines and product data management to monitor our performance on our new products. And over the past 5 years, there's been a change in the ability to leverage these things through the advent of virtual mockups, as you see on the top, virtual prototyping, virtual production, and product life cycle management data collection, things that we've been working on for the last 50 years, but now we have the ability to start digitizing these and bring them together. But still, we have some major challenges underneath that we still have to deal with. And for many of us, it's that we still have different systems, software, hardware, operating systems, somewhat disjointed, and we have different data formats from native, neutral, and interpretation. So a bit of a challenge in that we have a lot of good things, but they're not all together and linked.
During the previous webinars, we highlighted the phase gate process as a crucial aspect of the product development lifecycle processes. And here is an illustration of a typical phase gate process. We like to highlight how digital techniques, tools, and processes enable the NPD speed at each phase of this process. Most industries and most companies utilize a version of the same phase gate process that we have illustrated in this slide. In previous webinars, we showed the nuanced differences of this process, mainly based on the industry verticals. What is common about all of them is that they all start with measuring customers' unmet needs and then proceed to developing concepts and then on to detailed design and finally into the manufacturing or service processes and full launch.
So with Phil's excellent introduction of the phase gate process, what we've done is we've overlaid two perspectives of bringing digitalization into the new product development and launch phase gate process. Today, we'll review these two perspectives to integrate digital technology and methods and tools. So first, let's just look at the top. We're going to review these and integrate these into the presentation as we go on, and that are these digital process methods. We have everything from hyperautomation, artificial intelligence, all the buzzwords that you hear out on the street, so to speak. You have folks focus on the data journey and discovery-driven planning journey. So these are end-to-end tools that can help enable the acceleration of the phase gate process of the management of the data about the product and or service that's being built. So transactional activity-based processes, as we know, we've been using these tools in that space for quite a while, and it's proved to work quite well. And the question is, can it be efficiently and effectively deployed in the new product introduction and development process? And then today we'll also look at ways to accomplish digital process methods. Many of these disparate digital enhancements have been around for many years, starting with computer-aided design, engineering, and manufacturing for over 40 years, as we know. And e-commerce has been around since the Y2K bubble. And And then lately, additive manufacturing, three-dimensional printing, complex multivariate design modeling, and variation transmission modeling has been around for at least 10 plus years. So again, none of these tools and methods are necessarily new. What's new is bringing them together into a single user-friendly platform to standardize and automate R&D and engineering workflow to decrease the time to build robust designs that exceed customer expectations and provide your unfair competitive advantage. Today, Phil will cover how GoPros and digital technology enhances our ability to perform digital ethnography, and theory of inventive problem solving with biomimicry, people analytics. So all those green areas are the areas we're going to focus on. We're not dismissing anything else on this slide. We're simply saying that's where we're going to focus today.
So managing risk is a key to delivering successful product and service development projects. Risk factors, they appear all throughout the project structure, and they range from technical to project management to resources to even your market and business case. And so what we found is that the advanced digital tools can help manage these risks with less effort and more certainty. For instance, let's say we're understanding a customer's needs through the ethnography and sentiment analysis, and then deliver a design that meets those needs profitably. This can be facilitated by creativity tools that Phil's going to talk about. It's also digital tools that will simulate features and functions of the product as it's being designed, and then 3D printing that can produce useful prototypes faster than conventional model making could. So this is a way that these sorts of digital tools can address the different typical risk factors that you see within a NPI project.
Capturing customers' unmet needs has always been difficult and time-consuming. How do you expect customers to articulate their emerging needs? How do you access the right customers to give you the necessary feedback? Will the customer needs change over time? How do you minimize or eliminate bias from both customer and providers' feedback? How do you process a large volume of information from customer feedback? These are all some of the challenging questions faced by innovators even before the COVID pandemic. And even if we could precisely identify all the unmet customers' need, how can we still find the best possible concept for a given set of unmet customer needs? In this section, we'll highlight the digital tools that improve the speed and accuracy of discovering customers' unmet needs and generating the best concepts to address this need. First, let us focus on the most important aspect of new product development. It's about measuring customers' unmet needs. So that's what we highlight here, where in green called digital ethnography and people analytics. So a quote from late Professor David Garvin of Harvard Business School. He says, "Studies comparing successful and unsuccessful innovation have found that the primary discriminator was the degree to which user needs were fully understood." So in other words, finding the unmet customer's need is the primary driver for success rates for the innovation. Another group of researchers found out that overall success rate for innovation can go from 10%, a mere 10% to 85% by precisely identifying the jobs these customers are trying to get done and by solving them. After studying dozens of approaches to gathering customer needs, we have concluded that the best way to identify customers' unmet needs is not by listening to the customer's needs or by focusing on the customers themselves. Rather, it is by focusing on the jobs these customers are trying to get done. A job to be done is the reason a customer hires a solution. They hire solutions to get done the functional, emotional, and related jobs that arise in their life. They try to get each job done through a set of steps. This can be mapped with the help of a job map. Customers have expectations on how each step of the jobs are getting done. They are called outcome expectations. They're also known as hiring criteria customers use to decide which solutions they will adopt to get the job done. So gathering all of this information can be done through a 4-step process that's described on the right-hand side of the slide. First, you develop your hypotheses about the jobs and the outcomes expectations of the customers. Then we go observe the customers, and through their behaviors, we gain insights on how they get the job done. And this is the idea behind ethnography. Then, based on these observational insights, we improve our hypotheses through interviews and qualitative interactions. And armed with all these research, we will have a list of outcome expectations for a job to be done. Now, this can be taken further as a quantitative research study. And then from there, we can identify underserved outcomes. And in the pre-COVID era, the whole process was very time consuming and required a lot of interactions and a lot of physical visits to the customers. COVID forced us to rethink the entire process of gathering customers' need through the physical visits. Suddenly, companies like QualSites, www.qualsites.com as an example, became very popular due to their digital ethnographic apps and capabilities. Some companies started equipping customers and other job executors with GoPro cameras to see how customers are getting the job done through remote facilitation. Drones found new uses to gather information on the jobs getting done, especially in the outdoors. Construction and roofing product companies found drone applications sped up their process of data collection. Suddenly, a lot of text and video data became available in many contexts that could further be processed by NLP, a branch of machine learning, which is natural language processing, and doing sentiment analysis, using computer vision to analyze the digital photography. Remote interviews became feasible through Zoom and Microsoft Teams. The conversation could be recorded, it could be processed by NLP. Then the quantitative data gathered, that's the quantitative research, could be further analyzed with, again, machine learning and deep learning approaches. So on that quantitative data, you're actually taking the customer's need, we call them outcome expectations. We measure them on 2 dimensions. How important is this need, and how satisfied are you with the existing solutions in getting these needs met? And if you collect this data, now you can see the customers who find a need or a set of needs to be very important, but poorly satisfied, that becomes the foundation for innovation and where we should focus our value creation activities. In the digital era, we are able to use an unsupervised neural network and other AI techniques to do the segmentation process much easier. if you don't need segmentation, just as you can see from this graph, you can see on the right-hand side corner, a group of customers, a large percentage of the customers consider certain outcomes to be very or extremely important, but not very many people are very satisfied, and that forms the underserved outcomes. So this concludes the approach to identifying unmet needs, but the digital has enabled the speeding up of the entire process. In the next few set of slides, we are going to talk about, given a set of unmet needs, what are the best ways to find the best concepts? Many companies are turning to TRIZ and biomimicry research for accelerating this process. And there are lots of new movements in this dimension with digitization as a help to accelerate the process. We live in an era where disruption is becoming the norm rather than the exception. Whether you are the incumbent or the new entrant, you must be in search for better solutions that address customers' expectations. This means a journey in search of the most impactful solutions that's feasible. Theory of inventive problem solving, also known as TRIZ, has been found to be an excellent source in finding new concepts. Turns out that many problems we have been trying to solve has already been solved by someone somewhere, and most possibly in another industry. TRIZ researchers has been in search of algorithms and databases that makes this journey easier through the analysis of millions of patents available worldwide. Now, digital technologies has accelerated the journey and the process of searching and codifying the patent research. Let me illustrate one of such areas. This is called a technology trend prediction. Analysis of close to 100 million patents have revealed patterns in technology. This page summarizes a list of over 30 trends that's been codified and extracted from such patent research. So let me illustrate it with a simple example that we can all relate to. This trend is called the trend of dynamization. What they have found by studying hundreds of innovations and many patents, that according to this trend, a solution that is in the form of a solid many times starts out as a monolithic solution, moved to jointed solution, and became very flexible. But according to the trend, it says it should proceed through liquid and gas-enabled solution and eventually field-enabled solution. So for illustration, we can see the shield has eventually become a flexible, bulletproof vest made of Kevlar, made by DuPont. But according to this, we should be searching for a solution that's inspired by liquid and gas and field. Well, while DuPont pioneered the Kevlar, another entrant from Poland pioneered the next generation solution, as we describe in the next slide. A group of researchers in Poland discovered that non-Newtonian fluids have better capability to absorb an impact and shock rather than Kevlar layers of protection. As the image illustrates, the future of bulletproof vests are in the combination of a non-Newtonian fluid enabled Kevlar vest. So it fits well with the prediction. If DuPont had known the direction of this technology ahead and invested in it, they could have continued leading the journey of disruption. So this is another slide that shows two more trends. So among the 30 plus trends, here is the trend of how adaptive materials go from passive adaptive material to one-way adaptive to eventually multi-way adaptive. I have shown some examples of innovations that are inspired by this trend. Another trend is the surface evolution. And again, I have given an illustration from Airbus, inspired by this trend, how they have created the new wing surfaces that solves the challenge they were trying to solve. This kind of analysis and study has been going on for years. What's new is the enablement of cataloging, codifying, and analyzing millions of patents that are available to us. There are researchers at present in Russia, France, Netherlands, United Kingdom, South Korea, and many US institutions leading in this front through analysis of over 120 million patents. They are codifying how the inventions can be accelerated through solving contradictions or technology patterns of evolutions and classifying them. By taking advantage of such research, we can speed up our NPD process. Just as TRIZ enables us to find solutions from other domains known to humans, biomimicry has helped us find inspirations from nature. We are looking into nature's genius and getting inspired by her. Turns out that many vexing problems we are trying to solve has already been solved by nature. If only we could catalog nature's inventions and organize them in a way that makes it easier for us to access them for our needs. We are well on our journey in this front. Take an example illustrated in the next slide. The Japanese electric train companies faced a challenge. Its bullet trains are one of the fastest in the world. Nearly half of the railway lines operated by JR West, Japan Railway West, between Osaka and Hakata is made of tunnel sections. When a train rushes into a narrow tunnel at high speed, this generates atmospheric pressure waves that gradually grows into waves like tidal waves. These waves reach the tunnel exit at the speed of sound, generating low frequency waves that produce a large sonic boom and vibration so intense that the residents 400 meters away have registered complaints. Mr. Nakatsu, a technical manager responsible for the development of bullet trains, asked, what would nature do to solve this problem? Turns out that nature already solved this problem. To catch its prey, a kingfisher dives from the air, which has low resistance, into high resistance water, and moreover does this without splashing. Mr. Nakatsu wondered if this is possible because of the keen, sharp edge and the streamlined shape of the beak. After conducting several tests and computer simulations, the team optimized the shape of the nose of the bullet train after the kingfisher's beak. Inspired by the beak of the kingfisher, the redesigned shape has enabled the new 500 series train to reduce air pressure by 30% and energy use by 25%, even though the speeds have increased by 10% over the former series. How can each of us use the biomimicry process to discover the most impactful yet feasible concepts inspired by nature? It's illustrated in the wheel diagram, but I give a simplified illustration in this diagram. The simplified steps are 6 steps. Starts with identifying the human challenge, and then goes to find the so Jim, you can skip to the next slide. Find the similar function in the biology, find an organism that's adept at performing this function, understand the strategy used by the organism, and then understand the design principle and apply it to a human challenge. A more recent example comes from hockey players and football players. And you can see many of them, actually a large percentage of them, encounter concussions and brain damages. It's caused by the fact that our brain is a squishy, soft material, and our brain outside skull is very hard. So when you get a shock, the soft tissue hits the skull and it damages. The cavity has blood, but it is not strong enough to absorb the shock. So the researchers asked the question, who is good at this? Well, the woodpecker seems to be doing this millions of times in its lifetime, and they studied and found out that the woodpeckers don't get concussions or headaches. So they asked, what is its strategy? Turns out it has in a unique way, its tongue wraps around its head and it squeezes the jugular vein and it pumps blood at high pressure, and the cavity has a way to absorb the shock. Inspired by this, they created a collar that is shown on the bottom right-hand side. They equipped this collar with hockey players. Half of them were given the collar, the other half didn't. And they studied their brain, and you can see the brain scan shows damage for the kids who didn't wear the collar versus the ones who did. So this is an illustration of the biomimicry principle. Well, how is digitization enabling this? So first, we got to find out the functions. There are about 33 million species that lived the earth once upon a time, or still it does. But we don't have enough information and knowledge about the strategies used by all of them. It's estimated that we have captured about 1 million of them and their strategies. A great starting point is to look at asknature.org, where Biomimicry 3.8 people have codified many of the nature's function and actually codified about 1,700 strategies from nature. In the next slide, you can see it's organized in the form of a taxonomy, where it starts with the high-level function used by the biological organism, then it goes to the sub-level, and then the next sub-level. So if you're trying to solve a problem that requires breaking down chemicals, and our typical approach is toxic materials, nature uses non-toxic way to break down, and you can find inspirations from them. So I will stop at this point and highlight the fact that people have using digital methods, machine learning, deep learning approach to take all the literature that's available to us in the field of biology and organizing them in this way so that we can speed up the process of finding concepts. Now we move into the next section where we want to talk about visibility. How can we generate better visibility and better access to the data in a world where we used to design product and services, but we all lived in our silos? Think about the often incompatible systems in your company that uses today to document planning, designing, testing, and launching of new product and services. Digitization of the products are now available to bring all of that information together, organize it, and leverage it for project execution and documentation needs such as regulatory filings. The NPD process typically has many workflows and often works in silos. And with the help of digitization tools, as illustrated in this slide, we are able to bring them together, share them better, and add more visibility to the entire process.
So as we build these systems of data, something that is very foundational that we probably should come back to is enterprise information management. This is the building blocks of data, and it was really developed by Tom Davenport back in the early 2000s, where he identified two wheels. One is enterprise information management, and the next is business analytics. Under enterprise information management, we talk about risk management and value creation. Under risk management, we're talking and getting into things like data privacy and security, document content management, and a lot of the things that you hear on the news, cybersecurity. How do we protect the data that is in our underlying designs and in our processes. And that comes into the risk management part. As we move to value creation, the question is, what is the data? Do we trust the data? Is it correct? How are we moving from metadata, which is metadata is the data about the data, which is kind of a funny thing, but do we really understand the data? Do we have a master data management system where we understand how our tables are intertwined and how they interrelate, a one-to-many, many-to-one relationship? And do we have data governance in our processes and in our business to ensure that the data is being attended to? And then, of course, what is the data architecture? So this is kind of a painful process, but without it, when we go and try to do and optimize the new product introduction process, or any process for that matter, we will fall. And what you see in many applications is folks will do robotics process automation, or they'll do improvements, but then after they get the low-hanging fruit, it peters out. And one of the top reasons is believability of data. So as we move over to the right side, in business analytics, we get into ad hoc reporting and standard reporting, which has been around ever since I started my career over 40, 50 years ago. And then we get into queries, and now we're getting into alert systems. So now you hear about risk alert systems, machine learning. That's where this is starting to go into, and now predictive modeling. And to make this happen, digital twins, data marts are absolutely critical to bring these two worlds together. So what you're seeing now in the last 2 to 3 years is a significant increase in the ability to see data, not just from a SQL report, but a real-time data source. So moving from reports that are run daily to reports that are running instantaneously to make better and informed decisions. So I would just ask, in general, hypothetically to everyone there, is like, how do you use data today? Do you use data to make decisions? Do you believe the decisions? Does your leadership believe the decisions based on data? Or do you go to your subject matter expert? Are we able to collect the right data to make those decisions? And this is the hierarchy of business decision making, where we want to eventually get to real-time prescriptive analytics, and it is a journey. So if you look at the y-axis here, your competitive advantage is on the left axis, the y-axis, and on the x-axis, we have our maturity as we move from left to right. And so we have our raw data, clean data, standardized data, and what has happened. And this is typically what most organizations have today. But moving over to that next evolution into predictive analytics has been the difficulty for most organizations to move into the prescriptive analytics space. But today, with process mining and RPA and intelligent process automation in digital twins, we're now able to move into those spaces. So what you're seeing, again, only about 7% of all the companies are actually in the right-hand side of this chart. And so with the advent of these digital technologies, we're going to see a snowball of change in this. So from a new product introduction perspective, my question is, are you feeling comfortable that with this explosion out in the marketplace, that your competitors are not going to be doing this? And if they do this, how much speed are you losing if you don't do it relative to your competition and coming out with new products to meet their unmet needs, as Phil mentioned early on? Because the biomimicry, the ethnography, all of that is crunching a ton of data. We need to have systems that are able to do manage that effectively and efficiently. So this is a challenge. We have a lot of key processes, key activities. We have our schedules, our resource, our costs, our design history. We have a lot of this data in disparate systems. We're trying to track that. We're trying to do dynamic critical path analysis, which is very difficult to do. So you usually have a very good project manager managing the new product introduction and manually performing that variance to plan, timeline, activity costing, making sure our costs are in control, making sure we're hitting on the requirements of the specification of the product to meet the customer's unmet needs. We're using demand-driven planning to make sure we're hitting the market. We might do some scenario planning and some risk mitigation planning, but everything's being done disparately. But in a digital world, we can automate these things. We can use business intelligence from our user experience platforms, how we interact with things, and then we can use real-time alerts to make sure that we're working on the right activity. And then we can automate these informed decisions through that digital twin that we talked about using machine learning and get to that predictive and prescriptive analytics environment.
So every new product development project involves a variety of documents, and these documents are produced in a range of applications that are often unable to communicate with one another. So what needs to happen is to bring them together with a tool that makes them accessible through a single portal and that allows a number of advantages to speed up the project. So if you can flip the second half of the slide on. So first, you can more completely understand what the development process, and what this does is allows you at some point that you can actually automate parts of it. It also allows you to apply the artificial intelligence to the information and that helps you gather in or deliver insights about the design that might not have been obvious just by looking at all the different pieces that you had. And then third, such a system allows digital tools such as the video ethnography Phil talked about and advanced sensor arrays gather much more and better data than it was possible before. And all that together facilitates faster decisions based on this better information and the insights that you've been able to gather. So a good example of this is a design history file, which is project documentation where it can be done faster and more efficiently using these advanced digital tools. Regulated industries such as medical devices and aerospace require a complete record of the design process be maintained. This compilation is also necessary to effectively support a systems engineering approach, which includes like a multiple generation product plan and future updates on the project. The DHF, this design history file, used to involve shelves of binders or file cabinets full of thousands of pages of plans, procedures, drawings, test results, all that sort of stuff. More recently, most of these documents have been made electronic, but are still in some sort of an ad hoc filing system. So an intelligent business platform management handles documents in all forms and organizes them in such a way that they are easily searchable. These tools can also track completeness of your design history file, flagging missing items and actually pinging the responsible team members with reminders about getting them completed.
So again, we're creating this continuous data and process mining environment is one of the most significant challenges in developing a meaningful digital transformation program for any company. Our overall goal is to turn as much of that day-to-day interactions into meaningful ones and zeros so that analysis can be performed to make these informed decisions. We all know that traditionally ERPs are set up to collect prescribed data into a computer to support business processes from mostly an accounting and somewhat process perspective. However, the day-to-day life of the R&D scientist, the design engineer, the manufacturing engineer, the CTO has much different experiences from what is often captured in these ERPs. So with the advancement of these digital tools and methods, there is now the capability to hyper-automate these surrounding processes with intelligent process automation, going beyond RPA as we traditionally understand it. And it supports in these three areas: to mine the data, harvest the information, and look at the techniques and the real-time computer vision applications to help and enable through natural language processing, computer vision, deep learning. So data is continuously changing for a high rate of change so that we can more optimally reduce the difference between what we predict and what we actually perform. So this moves us to the second polling question. And I noticed that we're 8 minutes to the top of the hour. If you need to leave at the top of the hour, we understand. So here's the second polling question. What is the current state of digital tool adoption in your new product development process? A is managed in a single system with linked tools to address all phases of new product introduction. Or you have maybe some standalone tools for project management and some aspects like risk management. The third option is central electronic repository for ad hoc capture of project documents. And fourth is individual files and tools, and most information stored on team member hard drives or on paper. So we'll check the responses. So very interesting. Phil, Mark, comments?
I mean, A is nirvana. I mean, that's where you want to be. And I'm not surprised that folks aren't there. I guess I'm a little bit surprised that we're still on, half of the respondents are still at the individual files and tools with most of the information stored on hard drives. I would expect more to be on that central electronic repository nowadays.
Phil?
I agree with Mark. I think more and more companies, especially bigger companies and startup companies, have been moving more to the C and the B locations.
Yeah, I'm sure it's not a choice for the folks on the phone. It's where they're at. I'm sure they would want to digitize, but maybe building that return on investment model to do something different. And as I may have mentioned before, sometimes, or is that it's like a doctor. The doctor is the worst patient. So many of the engineers are the ones coming up with these development processes, but they want to apply them in other parts of the company, but they may not be so open to apply them in their own stable, so to speak. And when you look at digital adoption, it's usually the engineers that are the hardest to convince. And we all know that people want to protect their jobs, just like they did in the order to cash spaces in the past. And it took many years to break into that. So it's not that surprising that it's, lagging in that way. Thanks everyone for your responses. Very insightful. Thank you. So our fourth area here is on insights. And we know that, a product and service development project moves forward through a significant number of decisions ranging from who's going to do a particular task to gates where the project is either approved to move to the next phase or stopped altogether. Process mining and intelligent process automation can accelerate and make these decisions more robust, providing guidance that's not really generally available without the team's organized utilization of all the data that's available. So we're going to go to our friends at Celonis, an EIG partner, and just look into using this tool to help us on our way. And again, the goal of process mining is to provide transparency to the process so that it performs effortlessly without friction, as Celonis promotes the creation of a frictionless process. Traditionally, we manage processes with ERPs, as we mentioned, different databases. And in the NPI space, we often use project management software such as Oracle's Primavera, Wrike, Smartsheet, MS Project, and so forth. The power of process mining is that it doesn't really matter what system you have. It's activity based, and Celonis can track the activities and make them visible, and it can integrate different systems. So if you have 3 or 4 systems that are tracking activities, you can feed them all into one single interface. And so it's a pretty cool thing. And I did say cool, is that data can be quickly be assembled into this data lake, and eventually maybe even a digital twin. Further alerts can be developed for triggers, and critical path analysis that is very hard to do on projects can be performed in really real time at ease. And all your project history can be quickly analyzed to discover where you have those bottlenecks, those reoccurring issues, so that you can work on those from a new product introduction and development process. So how does it work? So there are 3 pieces of the information where you start tracking. It only takes 3 fields: activity names, such as the phase gates and their subtasks. Number 2 is the time date stamp, when the activity either started and or ended. And then the case ID, which could be your project name or sub-project name. And the additional columns are optional, but really provide that complexion of the transaction, such as the actual cost to budget, the difference between what you plan to complete and what you did complete from a timing, budget perspectives. And as we mature in applying these process mining tools, we can start developing triggers to optimize the processes. So when something stops and something else starts, what do? Robotics process automation, together with intelligent process automation, can look at the pros and cons of going in different directions. You can run a simulation, and on the fly, without having to have a major meeting, you can actually make that decision instead of saying, oh, we have to wait to the end of the week to have a meeting to decide what we're going to do. You end up losing a half a week just waiting to have a meeting to make a decision. So process mining, again, leverages all these event risk data and can end up integrating into machine learning in the future. So this is an idea to monitor at an industry. And we aligned it with the gates. We identified the different gates and we aligned them. So here you have the beginning to the end, where your market screening, idea generation, business reviews, design freezes, all the major components of your new product introduction process can be outlined here, so you understand where your bottlenecks are and how to improve on your critical path. And then Celonis has dashboards, really nice dashboards. You can create your own dashboards from the data if you don't like what they have, but it can be integrated directly into your business intelligence platform, or you can use theirs to get started. But the cool thing is you can look at where the problems are, you can drill down, you can do hypotheticals, you can set up alert systems, start building in machine learnings, and eventually this is, again, the primer to help you on your journey through building a digital twin, in which you can simulate your process and get to the point of prescriptive statistics. So with that, we'll move on to our next partner, Navidius, which also has a lot to offer in the RPA space of taking the mine process data and making it real. And again, as we discussed before, it's the day in the life of the engineer, the scientist. How do we make their life easier? So typically process automation challenges is around repetitive tasks. And yes, there are some repetitive tasks, but less in this area. But look at the other advantages. Outdated flexible systems. Do we have that in new product introduction? Yes. Do we have a lot of manual-based processes? Yeah. Do we have a lack of visibility of end-to-end process? Absolutely. What about multiple inconsistent data sources? Certainly. And then an inability to focus on employees in high-value tasks. So all of these areas where we have changing project expectations, the inability to focus on the right thing at the right time. NVIDIA's and using intelligent process automation, or sometimes called hyperautomation, can help us. So let's just look at a case study here of going from the world, the day in the life of an engineer, where they're in that CAD or K or CAM world, and they have they're doing their analysis, and then they have their cell phone where they're maybe interacting with other folks and doing tests, going to the lab. And so you have your GoPro. So all of this data can be then put into a data-driven digital twin, or just a data lake to start off with. And then you can bring in all the other required data that is needed to understand the whole new product introduction, and start bringing this whole thing together, so that we can have that interactive of saying, what is the project schedule? Are we doing the right thing? Oh, this got delayed. What can we do now? Instead of waiting a week, we can build an interface in which we can identify what needs to be done next. And then we can create alerts, prescriptive analytics, and alternative scenario planning in order to drive this, and then even link it right into your calendar. So this is not quote, quote, rocket science. This technology exists today. It's not exorbitant like it was 20, 30 years ago. It's no longer an experiment. It is today. It's around today. We're using it in other parts of the business, and maybe even using it in order to cache, but this technology can be leveraged very easily into this environment. And again, just a time check. We apologize for going over. If you need to leave, we understand.
Okay, well, we've talked about risk management in just about every webinar that we've presented on the new product and new service development. And we do that because it's that important. Digital tools can help us organize and make more robust how an NPI team deals with uncertainty, increasing our knowledge level and reducing the probability of bad things happening. So every project has risks, things that could go wrong and keep the program from delivering the product or the service under development. A standard way to manage that risk is to assess the probability, impact, and visibility of potential issues, and then build mitigations and contingency plans into the project to reduce the probability of an issue becoming reality. There are tools available to manage that approach. But as business reaches further into unknown territory, this classical risk management approach has its drawbacks. You can't estimate the probability of occurrence for an issue that you know nothing about. So that's where discovery, assumption-driven planning comes in. This was first described by McGrath and Macmillan back in the mid-1990s, and the main premise is that planning for a project where there are significant unknowns is different than planning for one where the uncertainty levels are low. The method focuses on assumptions that need to be true for the project to succeed. Each assumption is rated on how certain you are that it's true and the impact it has on the project. Risk goes down as uncertain assumptions are turned into knowledge through investigations that the team does. So AIM Institute, which is another EIG partner, has built a project de-risking tool called Minesweeper that actually facilitates this assumption-driven risk management. There are 4 stages to the process. It starts with the project team generating the assumptions that must be true. This is normally done in a workshop environment where the team members can actually play off of each other's ideas to get a more complete list of the items to be addressed. Each assumption is a positive statement, which is sort of the opposite of what you do in a normal risk management, rather than this statement of a potential issue. The second step in the process is for the individuals to rate each assumption for certainty and impact and recording those inputs in the tool. This individual assessment helps control groupthink and makes sure all opinions are captured. The team then meets again to assign a consensus rating for each assumption. Sometimes the individual assessments group tightly and the rating is obvious. Other times outliers occur and need to be heard before the team sets the rating. I've seen a single person with a unique knowledge or a unique insight swing the rating away from what the group might have done without those individual inputs. So finally, these assumptions are then grouped and collated on a grid to show easily the issues that need investigation. The groupings help organize and speed actions and address significant issues. They also help the team to assess their ratings in the context of all the assumptions. Sometimes ratings are changed for an item that does not fit logically with the others on the grid. So the team finishes the assessment workshop by creating an action plan to investigate uncertain and high impact assumptions. The goal is to turn uncertainty into certainty. These actions can be anything from market research or customer interviews to design tests or supply chain investigations. Through these actions, the number of danger and caution assumptions are reduced. The Minesweeper software records and tracks the assumptions and actions, giving a clear real-time status of that de-risking. And then finally, the Minesweeper provides report formats and templates that allow the team to update the management on a regular basis during the project. This readily available and transparent communication speeds management oversight and decisions. So overall, using a digital system such as AIM Institute's Minesweeper allows the team to have ongoing access to project risk profile, speeds up decisions and quickly flags off-plan conditions. And the team using this approach report that teams that have used this report that one of the greatest benefits is that this methodology lets them communicate their progress much more effectively inside the team and outside the team than they were able to using some homegrown or just a simple tracking process.
So the next polling question is, what is your organization's appetite to embrace, adopt digital tools to accelerate the NPI process? Is it voracious? Is it critical of our near-term success? Strong, it's critical. Moderate, we will adopt the tools and systems that can be used. And then low, we can adopt tools if and when they become useful. So it's the wait, or they're not even on the radar screen. So we'll show the responses. We have some moderates. Judging from the last question, these seem to be pretty in line with how you responded in the previous survey question. Mark, Phil? Comments?
Looks about I guess what I would expect. I'm glad to see there are some folks that say this is critical for their success especially over the long term. Because I'm not surprised that once again I'm not seeing people jump whole hog into this sort of stuff. So the voracious appetite for this sort of thing, I'm not surprised to not see something there. So.
Phil?
Yeah, I think it's consistent with the feedback we had from previous questions of where each of them are.
Thanks again for participating and hanging in there. We're running over. This one last section here, just closing it out on unleashing the digitization in your organization. And hopefully we've shown the extent of this advanced digitization tools that are available for a new product and service innovation. And we've looked into more detail for 4 specific areas within the new product introduction process. And we'd like to bring it all together as well as open to questions. these are the areas we ended up covering, and we're not able to cover everything, and we even went over here. There's an awful lot to discuss, and this is a new and evolving area, and we're going to see a lot of growth in it in the next few years. If you're in a high-tech area, I think these are the tools that they're using in startups and new products, but the companies that maybe been around for 20, 40, 50 years, it's harder to launch these types of tools into those environments. But what you'll see in the next 5 years is the cost for this greatly reducing and making it much more accessible to all markets. And so we close it out here as saying, unleashing, these are the things that we think that, Mark, Phil, and I feel that you can maybe look into that are cost effective. The digital ethnography, the remote collaboration, of course, tools, the concept generation from digitally enabled TRIZ and biomimicry. These are all, a lot of these are available free of charge in open source software. And the digital tracking and activity management from those providers like Celonis and NVIDIA's are coming in and becoming much more accessible. Of course, the simulation modeling will continue. Things like variation transmission analysis has been around for 20 years, is an excellent software package to help you optimize your design. So there's quite a bit of things that are out there. It's for you to choose what is the best for your company. We certainly can help there, but if there are any tools that you heard today that you would say looked interesting, we'd ask you to please type it in the screen or in the chat room. Mark and Phil, any comments about any of the different techniques or that we covered or did not cover?
Obviously, it's a big topic, and the appetite by organizations to embrace them varies.
Biomimicry. You sold somebody, Phil.
Yeah,
Right.
I think it's probably one of the hot topic, emerging topic in everybody's mind.
Process mining. Fantastic. And the key here is it can be overwhelming with everything else that's going on. And, choose one that makes sense for you in your company that's going to help enable to make a difference. We all know you got to crawl, walk, run. So, introducing some of these things to show at a pilot level the value of each and every one of these is the key. Choose something small, but it has high risk where you can get a decent return on investment, or processes that are continually fail or are continually late in rebuilding a process, or you have problems getting many different parts of the organizations align. A lot of these tools will help align the organization and create visibility between key decision makers so that you can be all on the same page. That generally breeds better performance, and the process mining tools help you there. And then, of course, the TRIZ and the biomimicry help you visualize these things, because very often we're visual people. This is fantastic. Thanks for your feedback. Mark, any comments?
No, this is, I think we're good on this one.
Okay, Phil?
I think that's it. I think there was a question in the chat window. I don't know if you guys saw it.
Yeah, there is a question. that I think this is one for Jim. Are we not seeing the merger of enterprise information management and business analytics? This goes back to your two-wheel chart, primarily due to the increase in processing speed and server speeds.
Are we seeing the merger of the two?
Yeah.
I think there's two. Well, they're being merged through data digital twins. If you don't have a digital twin, you can't really merge. I mean, they're really separate, almost like separate courses or separate sets of logic. And generally the people who do enterprise information management are people that are very detail oriented to make sure that the data is good and clean. And the folks that are doing the analytics are generally more visionary type folks that are addressing, trying to turn that data into decisions, meaningful decisions.
But
Yeah,
Jim, like Creator Soft is doing, because of our ability to process it so fast and do simulate so fast, you can almost make real-time decisions, and that might be where the question intent
Yeah.
was
Yeah.
from.
Yeah, if that's
Yeah,
where it's coming from, that's great, Phil, that you mentioned that, because it's a real challenge to get good, clean data. And because of Internet of Things, the data coming into the systems are more trustworthy now than they ever have been. So if you look at Industry 4.0 and all the technologies to help bring that data in, the edge sensor technology, we can now trust that data. It's not an opinion. And that greatly enhances our ability to make better decisions. Our biggest plague has been, everybody says we have a ton of data. In actuality, we don't have data to make decisions on a daily basis. There are decisions to make on a yearly basis or quarterly basis, but we need data to make decisions on a daily basis or hourly basis. And it's these new edge sensor technology that is changing everything.
So Jim, there's one other question if we've got time, and that would be, and this, I think it's an intro. What would you recommend that someone just starting to digitize their new product process do first?
Well, it's like a tired horse. You need to map your end-to-end processes out very clearly. The business process management activities can't be understated. And to help you do that, you can use process mining of how you're tracking that today. And if you're not tracking that electronically, you can use process mining tools like NVIDIA's in their intelligent process automations to build that interface to start tracking. You need to just start tracking what are people doing every day so that it's up in front and real. That's where I would start.
Okay, Phil?
I think I agree.
Okay, I would have a slightly different take on it. I would say, look at your process, and if there's some place you don't think you're doing something well, and there is a sort of off-the-shelf tool that you can move your process over to whatever that off-the-shelf tool process requires, I'd try that because you get your feet wet on this sort of tool, and secondly, you address an area that you don't think you're doing particularly well in.
Yeah, well, that goes on. You're only as strong as your weakest link.
Yep.
So understand what your weakest link, fix that. And if you can fix that quickly, absolutely.
Okay. There is one more that have just come in. We're being hung for a lamb, we may as well be hung for a sheep for being over time. Is tracking people's activities at detail level realistic and practical?
It's a great question. And, with GoPro access codes, you need to be able to track people's activities from a realistic point without being obtrusive. So choosing what is that activity level is, and it can just start from just saying, how many hours you're spending on key activities. What are the most critical activities that have the highest variation in time? That's what I would focus on, and just have people write down what they do. I usually just start by having people turn in what are the top, get everybody on the team and say, what are the top 7 to 10 items that you work on today, and start tracking those for a week or a month to start understanding where the bottlenecks are. And then say, is there Internet of Things or access, or different types of technology that can help track that easily. We do not want to be spending time tracking that. But if these are the tasks that are your bottlenecks, we need to start tracking it so that the engineers say, this takes longer than it's expected. The manager says, oh, when I did that, it took me an hour to do that. Why is it taking you 4 hours to do it? Right? And until we actually look at that and track it, it all becomes as an argument that it should take an hour instead of 4 hours. We got to move to data somehow.
Okay, I think that wraps up the questions. So Jim, I think you've got a closeout slide or two.
Yeah, we have a closeout. So hopefully what you got out today was this, establishing a foundation to accelerate your digital return on investment. Those are great questions. On that return on investment, how do you find value in this? And there's many different cost-effective digitization opportunities. And, process mining and hyperautomations are not just for high volume transactions. And of course, we can get to the real-time collaboration for that enhanced decision-making. And of course, in doctoring, digital transformation is becoming a competitive advantage. We know in the high-tech sectors, they're using all these tools. The question is, can we use these tools in these other sectors that have been around for the last 50, 100 years? And when do we get started? And we know that because this technology is becoming more prevalent, we're going to have to get on the bus to do it. In China, this is how they're building everything. I hate to bring up China, but that's how they're doing everything today. That's how they're doing their engineering. They're going to leapfrog us, not only in manufacturing, but engineering and design and development using these type of techniques. So it's for us to decide if we want to get on the bus or not and start using these. And as John Cotter said, he's been around for years. The rate of change is not going to slow down anytime soon. We know it's accelerating. If anything, competition is going to, in most industries, will probably speed up even more in the next 5 decades, I'd say in the next 5 years, than anybody can imagine. So in order for your country, whatever country you come from, become competitive, this is going to be a big key to the success. With that, closing it out, we do have some webinars coming up next week on risk appetite. We'll be back here on May the 4th, and then artificial intelligence at the end of the month, as well as digital twins that Mark and Phil mentioned during. So again, thank you. We are organized on people, process, data, technology. Without the people and process, the technology won't work. We all understand that, and hopefully we made that clear in today's webinar. And we at EIG and all of our partners, thank you for attending.